there, everyone in listener land. Welcome to the airwaves. Welcome to the new podcast. Welcome to a brand new show we're going to bring to your ears. My name is Tony Carbonette, and I'm an athletic therapist. And we're coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario. I'm here with my cohort, my producer, my behind-the-scenes genius, Brian Jones. He's not mic'd up, doesn't want to talk to you, has nothing to say, so I'll do the rambling, I'll do the scrambling, and we'll go from there, and we'll see where this thing leads to. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to have a podcast for you that's going to talk about a whole range of topics, from concussions, therapy, athletes post-careers. We're going to bring in some special guests from the Paralympic world talking about various experiences that they've been through. And we'll bring that to you and give you some enlightenment and hopefully give you a little bit of education, give you a little bit of levity on the world of sports, from a coaching point of view, from all the different levels that my career has experienced me to. And hopefully we can bring that to your ears and give you a little bit of insight as to how the world of sports is behind the scenes. So to start off with, we are going to talk to you a little bit about athletic therapy and what an athletic therapist is. Athletic therapist is, we're basically the injury people behind the scenes. We assess injuries, we diagnose, we treat sports injuries. Anything that has to do with sports is where you're going to find us. So for example, if you watch a football game, if you watch a hockey game, if you watch a baseball game, and an athlete gets hurt, an athlete goes down, the person that runs on that field, that male, that female that runs out in that field, that first point of contact for an athlete, usually that's the therapist for the team. And that's the person that gets to see the acute injury, what happens, gets to help the athlete at that moment. And then at that point, under their direction and the direction of the rest of the medical staff, whether it's a doctor or whether there's other people involved and surgeons, the team will take over and work as a unit and go from there. So that's what, in terms of the sporting world, an athletic therapist does. The behind the scenes stuff is a little different because we can treat, we'll be part of the rehab process, we'll direct the athlete in terms of their exercises, their conditioning, all sorts of facets. And there's a whole gamut of stuff that therapists will be trained in and specializing in, whether it's biomechanics, whether it's movement, whether it's reconditioning, whether it's training, whether it's getting back to sports, whether it's injury management. There's all various different sizes of therapists that have different skill sets that can bring to a team or to a client. So that's basically what an athletic therapist is. And the funny thing is, I think it's got to be noted that athletic therapy has come a long way, because in the old days, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and in the old days, I got into the field, and the term athletic trainer, or just short form to trainer, was still floating out there. And when I was covering rugby games in high schools or at the recreational level, you would get somebody would get hurt in the field, and you'd hear trainer, and we were just known as trainers. And prior to athletic therapy, the term trainer, the job description trainer was the catch-all phrase, if you will. And the part that's where we've grown from is that back in those days, right, trainers, they were towel, and I'm not using the term boys to mean it wasn't females, but I'm going to use the term just as a catch-all, but they were towel boys, stick boys. They were, they had tape, and if you needed your stick taped, or if you needed your shoe taped, or if you needed a Band-Aid put in your forehead, and it was a bit of a catch-all, and they did a little bit of everything. But when it came to the actual injury, you kind of got shoved off to the doctor, or you kind of got shoved off to the hospital, and so our field is evolutioned. If that's a word, I guess it's been we've evolved a lot in terms of what we do, and so we've grown a lot very quickly in the last sort of 15 to 20 years, and it's been a hell of a journey, and it's so if you're not familiar with the field of athletic therapy, don't be afraid to sort of look up a therapist, find out what they can do for you, and we're not as we don't have the numbers as the mainstream field of medical people out there. Physio certainly still has lots of numbers. Chiros and massage therapists certainly have lots of numbers, but we're very much a specialized field. So that's a little bit about where my background is and why I'm in the field and what I've done. And there is a specialized schooling for that. So you can't just show up and want to be a therapist. You got to go to school. And my background is I have a degree in exercise physiology. I have a degree, if you will, or a diploma in sports injuries. So you compile that all together, and you get a very specialized field with very specialized knowledge. So that's a bit about the field, and I think it'll be to start off with. So hopefully, as you listen to 3, 4, 5 more podcasts, and we get into hopefully 10 or 15 of these things, and my cohort Brian and me don't kill each other and trying to figure out stuff. Hopefully, we'll get into some different topics where you have the trust and the faith in us that we're bringing you some good information. So, to give you a little bit of background on how I got into this, I got in this field because I got hurt. I was playing competitive hockey. I got kneed in an injury that set me back, I think, for the whole season. I was about 16 years old, and I got kneed and tore a bunch of ligaments in my knee. And back then, we're going back, I'm not going to tell you my age, but we're going back at least 25, 30 years now. And back then, when you got hurt, if it was significant enough, in my case, they thought it was significant enough. Doctors are telling you, you'll never skate again. And here you are, a 16-year-old boy, aspirations of playing competitive hockey and junior hockey and pro hockey like every kid is, and you're being told you can't skate again. I don't know what my face looked like back then, but I'm pretty sure it was drooping and tearful. So when I went through the experience of going to therapy, getting the knee rehabbed, going through all the functional stuff, getting the direction and the guidance to how to skate again, how to jump again, how to be an athlete again. And I still remember this day, the therapist looking at me and say, "Go play hockey and have a great career." So at that point, when you're a 16-year-old kid, and you're told one day you'll never skate again, and 4, 5, 6 months later, go and enjoy your career, it's a profound effect, and it definitely molded my journey. And to this day, I don't know who that therapist was. I'll never remember his name, but it certainly set me on a track. And here's where I am today. So that's sort of how I got in this little journey a little bit. So a little bit about the background of where I've been, again, to sort of lay down this foundation of trust that we're going to get into later on when we start harping on different topics, and when we start possibly being, picking fun on different topics and bringing different guests in, is a little bit of background for where I've journeyed myself. So up until this point, I've spent some time in the CFL for 1 year, worked with the Ottawa, at the time called the Rough Riders, when there was 2 Rough Riders in the league. And that time, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, it was shortly after that the team folded, the first fold. I joke around, but hopefully the little student who was spending a year with the team wasn't the cause of their folding. But I don't think I had any part in that. But we'll make sure we don't take that part too seriously. But spend some time working pro soccer. Ottawa had a pro soccer team prior to this Fury team that they have now. There was a team that we had here that played in the CPSL, which was the Canadian Pro Soccer League. They were called the Ottawa Wizards. So spent 2 years with them and had the pleasure of traveling around pretty much Ontario is where they played out of, and got to see some really good soccer, some local athletes that were following their dreams and their passions, and got to be part of their journey, and actually won a championship in our second year of existence. So that was a fun journey. That put me on a course to getting back to hockey. I was a kid that grew up playing hockey, dreaming about playing hockey, like most kids do. And so I got back to my roots of hockey and got involved with a sport called sledge hockey. And if you've never heard of sledge hockey, it's a sport that's played hockey 5-on-5, but mainly by Paralympians. And at the international level, all athletes are Paralympians. That means they have to have a form of disability that qualifies them or allows them to be part of the team, the international program. So at that point, I got into involved in the sport, and it was fairly new in terms of the public. I don't think a lot of people knew what sledge hockey was. There was Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, Winter Olympics, things like that. They were all part of. They had World Championships, and so I got involved in that as their head therapist way back in 2003, if my memory serves me correctly. So at that point, they were building a bigger program. They brought in some hockey coaches, they brought in some hockey equipment people, they brought in some hockey managers, and luckily enough, I was one of the hockey therapists that they were looking to make some changes to. So got involved in that sport, and that really defined and helped change my direction in my journey in life. Ended up spending 11 years with that program. Worked on becoming one of their high performance coordinators, and at that point, when you're working at developing a sport and developing athletes from scratch, you are spending a lot of time at the grassroots, educating the next generation. You're reaching out, talking to future Paralympians, young kids, young boys, young girls that might have gone through some traumatic, got in a car accident, survived cancer, whatever it was. So really opened my eyes to a lot of different genres of injuries out there. And that turnaround allowed me to speak at some international conferences and help educate future medical people in the field, whether it was doctors or therapists, about the various types of injuries that exist in pro sport or Paralympic sports. And it was fun, and it was encouraging, it was enlightening and educational to be able to speak to a lot of people in our field about these various injuries that some of those medical people hadn't seen before. So it's definitely set me on a journey that I didn't know where I was going to be prior to that, especially in the Paralympic world. So, but with the hard work and behind the scenes also came some of the fun stuff. So with that program, there's no hometown league or anything like that. There was no Team Toronto versus Team Ottawa versus Team Montreal. There was only international play, and it was Team Canada. That was it. So to play a game, to play in a tournament, you had to travel abroad, and you had to play Canada versus the world. So we were very fortunate enough, and early in our journeys with this team, the new coaches, the new managers, some of the new players, and the new staff like myself, we found ourselves in Germany, we found ourselves in Sweden, we found ourselves in Norway, Japan, playing in various tournaments, Four Nations tournaments, and World Championships, and quickly got to the 2006 Paralympics in Torino. And so I had done some traveling, obviously, for 2 or 3 years prior to that, but had never in my wildest dreams thought I was going to land in the Paralympics. And so for those who don't know or are not accustomed or don't know much about the Paralympics, it's basically a mirror image of the Olympics. Now, the numbers aren't the same. You're not showing up with 30,000 athletes. In the Winter Paralympics, there's only 6 sports. The numbers of Paralympians just aren't the same as the numbers of Olympic athletes. So, but we get the same. We slept in the same area. The athletes were all treated the same. We had the cafeteria, we had the dorms that were put up in, the travel, the lights, and the first time, and I'm very fortunate. I think I'm going to be one of very few people, obviously, but when you're sitting in a tunnel underneath a hockey rink or a stadium, if you will, I believe, in Torino it would have been a soccer stadium, because they have. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Juventus that plays out of Torino. So I think we were in the catacombs of a hallway, buried underneath the stadium, and they had all the teams lined up, and they have all the athletes all together by country, and you have to wear all your country's garb, and we had a certain thing we had to wear that day for the opening ceremonies, and they march you through up, and as you get closer and closer to this magical little curtain, you're seeing all the athletes ahead of you just disappear going through this curtain, and then I think you kind of blank out a little bit, and then you just hear that word Canada, and then everybody starts hooting and hollering, and you walk out the hallway, you walk through the hall, and you get through the curtains, and you look up, and you, for the first time, you don't expect it. You don't know what you're expecting. Is there 40 people in the stands, or is there a couple hundred people in the stands, or a couple of thousand people, and they're all clapping? You walk out in the stadium, and there's legitimately 70,000 people, in this stadium. And fireworks are going off, and people are cheering, and people are waving at you, and there's a section with your Canadian family in there, and everybody's in there waving and pointing, and you walk around and your body goes numb as you're in the middle of this stage, in the middle of a stadium, and you're literally looking around at 70,000 people going bananas. And it dawns on you, and it hits you right there and then that you're involved in something bigger than you could ever imagine, right? There's this building is full of people and athletes that are Paralympians, and they're at the pinnacle of their careers and fighting for what they've been fighting for at minimum 4 years to 8 years. There are people in the stands celebrating the Paralympic movement, cheering on people, not because they're missing a leg or not because they're missing a hand, but because they're an athlete and they're fighting for a gold medal or to be the best at their sport. And then, you look up in the stands and you hear later on how the president of this country and the president of this country are here and the prime minister of this country are here. And there are huge dignitaries coming in and supporting their country, their athletes. And so there's something very, very bigger at stage. And so when you realize where you're at, and it hits you hard. And it hits you hard in a very, very good way. You realize where you're at. So an extremely fun experience. Needless to say, anybody can research this stuff on YouTube now. 2006 wasn't that long ago. So this stuff's all over YouTube. There's videos for it. I won't go break down the whole games game by game. Obviously, that might get a little bit too boring and tune everybody out. But the fact remains that Canada ended up winning a gold medal those games. And the team went in ranked 4th, and they came out 1st, and they beat the number 1 team in the world at that time, who was Norway. Beat them 3-0 in the gold medal game, and you want to talk about a little guy from Ottawa who at one point was playing hockey with the dreams of playing hockey and playing in the NHL himself, getting hurt, playing junior, watching a career that kind of fizzled out a little bit, getting back involved in hockey, and then turning around and realizing you just won a gold medal for Canada. So that was a bit of an experience, and to see 17 athletes and 6 staff, sports psychologists, equipment managers, head coaches, assistant coaches, all of us just jumping around like we were 4-year-old kids playing in the mud. It was an unbelievable experience, and realizing what we just did, and all the hard work we did for the first 3 or 4 years prior to that. So fun times with Hockey Canada. And without getting into the detailed journey itself, over the 11 years as a group, with various equipment managers and various coaches that come in and gone, and various players that kind of got released or got cut or made the team. I was lucky enough to sort of stick with the team for 11 years, and after my journey, 2 World Championship medals, 1 Paralympic gold medal, countless 4 nation tournaments, championships, and hopefully represented Canada at the highest level with a little bit of dignity and decorum, and have some hardware at home to show for it. But that just means there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes. There's a lot of athletes that we had to care for, lots of different injuries, and we'll get into that in some of our podcasts, just educating people on some of the disabilities and some of the behind the scenes stuff when we get into story time, and we'll go through that a little bit. So that's a little bit about the journey about hockey, and where I've spent most of my time over the last 15, 20 years, educating myself and molding myself as a therapist. So that's we'll get into a little bit more, but that's where that has led to this day. So after the 11 years, that's where that's led to. It's led to a great career in sports, and so now where we're at is we're at a point where we're giving back to the community. We want to bring those experiences back to the individual person. We want to bring those experiences back to the everyday athlete who's running, jogging, lifting weights, competing, not necessarily at the international level, just for themselves, a mom, a dad who just wants to stay in shape, the young athlete who's trying to get to the next level. We're going to take those experiences and hopefully bring some education to the journey for them. So if there's anything that helps them along the lines, that hopefully we can do that. So after that experience, we've wrapped that up for 11 years. That brings us to today. And today we are an owner of Capital Athletic Therapy and Rehab Center, located in Ottawa, Ontario, where we have a clinic that is housing athletic therapy, physiotherapy, massage therapy. It houses osteopathy. We've got sports mental consulting and some personal training. So we're trying to bring all those experiences to one roof, one dynamic roof, one multidisciplinary roof, where hopefully those experiences will be translated to the client, and they get to get treated like a pro athlete or an international athlete. So we're not going to keep the first episode too long. Basically, this one's about educating you, introducing ourselves to you, getting to know the journey and where we've been and how we've gotten here. One of the things we're going to encourage you to do over the next 3 or 4 episodes, we'll give you some information on emails. You guys want to write or drop us a line and give us some ideas on topics. We've got some good shows lined up. We've got some guests lined up already. We're going to get into talking about concussions. It's a big topic of the day. Everybody seems to have their 2 cents on it, and we're not going to be any differently here. But hopefully, we're going to bring some truthful information for you. We've got some good top-notch guests lined up about concussions in sports, about concussions in soccer or football or hockey. We've got some education. Hopefully, if you have kids out there, especially concussions in youth right now is a big topic. So we'll talk about various dynamic issues about concussions. And the word concussion, we can ramble on that the whole day, but we'll try and break up individual topics within that realm of concussions. I'm certainly got my connections, and we're going to bring you some athletes that have left their sports in terms of post-retirement, the change to go from a top athlete to a parent, or a top athlete to getting back into the world of the workforce, or how to change their mindset and getting into not being an athlete anymore, what that means, how do those athletes do that, how do those individuals handle that change. We're going to talk to some Paralympians, which is still a very intimate topic to me. I've got some dear friends of mine who are still intimately involved in the Paralympic world, who work in the world, and we're going to bring some of those guests in to talk about their journeys, about if they were an able-bodied athlete at one time, becoming a Paralympic athlete, what was that experience like? We're going to talk about if they were born a Paralympic athlete, what has that journey been like for them? How did they get to this spot? And what is it they're giving back, or what is it they're doing now with their careers, post-sport, things like that. So we'll have a few those special guests in there for you, as well as those topics. We'll definitely be talking about some coaching issues, coaching in sports, coaching youth. I am a high-performance hockey coach as well, so that's a sport that's very important to me. And now that I've transferred some of my therapy experiences and bring them to the coaching experience. I've been involved in youth sports for the last 10 years and very intently in the last 3 or 4 years. So we're going to talk about coaching youth sports, coaching development, developing an athlete. There's lots of do's and don'ts out there, the experiences of coaching, and we've got some good guests lined up about talking about that, and hopefully that will bring some information if you're a parent out there who's got a kid in sport, or if you're a coach who's out there and looking to get some feedback onto what the parent side of things are. We'll bring that to you as well. So there's a few things that we'll get into as the podcasts go on. So we're going to just wrap this up and just say, I don't even think we have a name for this podcast yet. I'm sure we'll come up with one, but I think for now we'll call it the TCast. We'll come up with, I'm sure, a better name for it. Feel free to drop us an email, and when we start handing out the emails, and maybe we'll do a little competition or something, and we'll see if somebody come up with a good name for us. But for now, we'll call it the TCast, and we'll leave you with that. Welcome to the show. We think we're gonna have some fun here together. I think we'll get to know each other well, and we're looking forward to having some fun. We're looking forward to seeing where this little journey goes, and I know we're both excited about doing this for you. So we'll sign off for now. Enjoy your days. This is Tony Carbonette. It's welcome to the TCast, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.